family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Lauren Norris.
George Bernard Shaw said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." The biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place. When my coaching client said to me, "I think I was more confident in my communication skills before I started coaching." Really? Am I that bad? It's a whole different answer on the backside of this that we really need to talk about. Stay tuned.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J. Lauren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And yeah, as a communication coach, I'm a certified leadership coach for almost 12 years now, but with a real focus in communication. I tell people all the time, story power is an inside job. Story power is a leadership tool. Story power is not just about how you deliver your elevator pitch, which some people will use it for that. They might use it for their brand communications, for their intro of their talk, for understanding how they can use a story as an illustration or a metaphor. And all of those are true and valid. But story power is really an inside job. As a communicator, what comes out of you when you're under pressure, it's what's already in you. Do you have the maturity? Do you have the wisdom? Do you have the strength? Do you have the confidence? Do you have not just the bravado of being a great communicator, but have you taken the time to dig into the words that you've chosen to use to ask yourself, am I just running off the cuff because I have this confidence? I'll dare say, for a lot of people, their communication skill is a false confidence. They have the natural gift of gab, they just don't have the gift of shut up. They have the natural gift of gab, they can talk to anyone, they could argue with a fence post and feel like they've won. They like to talk. They enjoy talking, expressing. Maybe they even love being verbose. Maybe they even love being a little pedantic. Fine. But does that make what you do as a talker, as a speaker, as a speechwriter, communication? It's a whole different thing, right? If you don't know that it is, then you need a coach. If you think that just because you're an extrovert, that you love to talk, that you love to have a conversation, that you'll walk up to any stranger because you have this boldness to speak, just because you have this confidence to speak doesn't mean you're a great communicator. It doesn't mean that your ideas are being transferred. It doesn't mean that productivity is being transmuted. It doesn't mean that lives are being transformed. Oh, you may be talking, but you may be the fodder for whom the t-shirt was made that says, I see your lips moving, but all I hear is blah, 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 blah. Normally we attribute that to the listener being a teenager or a little stubborn or infinitely distracted. But the truth is, A good communicator connects with the audience in front of them, even if they have no similarities, because they've taken the time to study the stories, to study the elements of communication and connection. They've dug deep into the who that they are themselves to find that mature, responsible, transfer-worthy wisdom, those ideas that could genuinely make a difference in someone else's life. They've looked at the words that they might accidentally transpose within their own verbal barrage, like genuinely and generally. I can't tell you how many times I hear someone accidentally interchange those two words, and they're massively different if you just look up their definitions. I hear them interchange words like invoke, evoke, and provoke. Massively different. Which one of those are you going to do to me as a communicator? Do you have an intention to do it, or did you just stick a word in there that kind of sounded like it fit, but you're not exactly sure what it means? See, that's what happens when you have a natural gift of gab, is you throw words in there and it's kind of a 50-50 balance, right? There's a chance that you said exactly the right word and everybody is wowed by your brilliance. There's also a 50-50 chance that the listening audience has no idea what that word means, and so the context that you've put it in explains it. It would be similar to ordering a pizza and not knowing what anchovies are. Oh yeah, throw them on there. And you're thinking these are black olives, and instead you get what looks like sardines on your pizza, and you're like, ew, that's gross. I didn't order a pizza with fish. I ordered a pizza with chicken. I got fish. No, sir, you ordered a pizza with anchovies. The fact that you didn't know that anchovy was a tiny little fish is the reason you're shocked with what's on your pizza. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who have a false bravado about their ability to communicate because they feel confident. They feel like, I can string 10 words together. Now, we've all seen people in the media that are horrified to get in front of a camera. They get cornered. They get angled. Somebody asks them a tough question, and then blah, 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 blah comes out. They can't string 3 sentences together. They're labeled with expert. It has their name and the banner in the lower thirds, kind of like the one I have on the screen right now, and you think, well, because it says they're an expert in energy or oil and gas or electricity, that what they have to say on the subject should be brilliant, profound, intuitive. And yet, it comes out sounding like a 5th grader who's about to fail a test. Does that make them a bad communicator? Well, yes. You know what else it makes them? A less than great leader. Because of all the things that a leader must be, if John Maxwell is right, and I believe he is, leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. And the most important part of leadership is communication. You've got to be able to communicate your ideas. You've got to be able to share with people the new notions. You got to be able to move people from where they are to where they're going to be. You've got to give them the vision that you have, the strategies that are necessary to fulfill it, the tactics that they have to carry out. See, this whole series we've been working on for the last month or so has been about leadership development. And of all of the things that are necessary for leadership development, communication is the most significant, in my opinion. Why? Well, because your ideas mean nothing if they stay inside your head. You, at minimum, have to get them out onto paper, perhaps in a book, in a memo, in a white paper, in a blog, a Facebook, and a LinkedIn post. Something, get them out of your head. In your head, they do nothing but rattle around in your head. But when you get them out, you can't just squeeze them out like toothpaste, because you'll never get it back in there. If you're going to let those ideas out of your head, which you must, then you've got to do it in a way that the rest of the world can actually use them, apply them. You've got to do something with that communication. Now, I'll tell you one of the strangest contrasts that I've encountered as I coach communicators. I have these communicators that come to me and instantly they'll say, well, I've got all this experience in my business. I understand my business like nobody's business. I know my background. I know what I'm trained in. I know what I'm sufficient at. I know what I'm competent at. Nobody can even come close to what I do. And I think, well, that's great. You got all that confidence. But then many of them will say, I just don't know how to put the words together to tell everybody else what I understand. That can be a problem. I mean, it's great to have all the information, but if it's trapped inside your head, what good is it to the rest of the world? You've got to be able to get it out of your head. I also run into those people who are like, well, I have this combination of knowledge and it's kind of scattered all over the place and I love to communicate, I love to talk, so just tell me what to talk about and I'll do it. That was me. 15 years ago, I would literally tell people, write me a check for being a speaker, tell me who your audience is and what you want me to talk about, and I will write a speech that wows them. What everybody wanted to know was, what are you an expert in? Well, that's kind of a trick question anyway, isn't it? Because people can call themselves expert at a lot of things. In fact, I think it was Malcolm Gladwell who came out with the book Outliers, who said if you've got 10,000 hours of experience in something, you have more dedication to that one thing than just about anybody else in the world. In fact, it was in that same vein of philosophy of being an expert that said if you read 5 books on one subject, you probably have read more than the average person in the world. That makes you an expert on that one subject. Well, dare I say, that's like 1/5 of my library that you can see right there in the corner of that shot. And I've read a couple of books on leadership and communication and politics and psychology and quotes and philosophy and theology and racism and history. And which one am I an expert on? None of them really, but I would say of all of them, I've studied leadership and communication more than anything else. So if I were to claim being an expert on any of them, that would be it. And I haven't yet written it, but the book called Story Power, that will probably be my tome of communication and what I've learned and studied and taught about story. But even then, to call myself an expert, I would say, yeah, I'm getting close. But there are still people that know more about story than I do. Dr. Jordan Peterson wrote the entire process as a psychologist called life authoring. And guess what it is? It's how to use the stories of your life to rewrite your life. Not just to articulate the things that happened in the past, but to present the things that will happen in the future, to reshape them, to redirect them, to identify what's coming next. When I work with my communicators, with my coaching clients, I tell them, in the closing of your talk, you should have the future cast. That last paragraph, if you will, should give people the hope, the imagination, the inspiration, the motivation to move forward with all the instruction you've given over the course of your talk, to say, now that you know what you didn't know before we started, here's the benefit of knowing it, and here's what you're going to do with it, and this is how your life is going to be so much better when you take the instructions that I've given you and you apply them. That future casting, that's authoring, that's life authoring. That's the work of Jordan Peterson. That's 30 years as a clinical psychologist. I can't even come close. He studied way more. I study him. But when it comes to the story that you tell, the number of times that I'll sit down with a client, or like this weekend in a workshop, I heard someone say about 15 things. And I said, based on what you've said so far, these are some things that I know about you. Tell me if I'm right. And when I laid them out, the person looked at me and went, how could you possibly know that from what I said? Well, because your story reveals the who that you are more vividly, more loudly, more accurately than a Q&A session. That's story power. As a communicator with a whole lot of bravado, you might say, look, I can talk about anything. Just give me the microphone, give me the audience, and give me a check. Well, it may be true. But it may also be true that what you say by accident reveals more about you than had you intentionally chosen those words carefully. See, I married an introvert. In her words, shy. Oh, she's a thinker. Her number one on Strength Finders and learner, just like mine. We're always studying. We're always reading, watching podcasts. We go on road trips and we look for series of conversations, whether it's Joe Rogan or PBD or Jordan Peterson. We look for these conversations of deep practical psychology and deep leadership principles and deep communication, or even science and technology that's on the cutting edge, and we pour into them. If you were to ask her, do you understand those things? She would say, And that's it. Yep, I get it. But she doesn't feel a burden to pour into you what she's learned. It's not her thing. But if you were to ask her the deeper questions about how that impacts your life, she's got some answers. She's just not really forthcoming with those answers. Here's what that means, though. And I've told people this for years. For several years, we did pre-marriage counseling together, my quiet little wife and I. And oftentimes, it's kind of comical, people would go back to our leaders, our pastor, Dr. Johnny Kane, and say, I'm concerned that he doesn't let her talk. I wonder if maybe he abuses her. And after several times of this happening, Dr. Johnny Kane said, I'd like to meet with the two of you. And so we sat down in his office, and about 5 minutes in, he asked me to leave. About 5 minutes later, he calls me back into the office, and as soon as I sat down, he looked at me, he looked at her and smiled, he looked back at me, and he said, how do you make her talk? And I laughed out loud. I said, you can't make her talk. But when she does, you better be listening, because it's with a whole lot of pain and ire. It takes a lot of pressure to make my little introvert talk. But when she does talk, it's for two reasons. She cares deeply about you. And what she has to say is burning a hole in her tongue, and she can't stop it. Now, she'll probably have red streaks from the bottom of her ears all the way into the top of her shirt. And if you see her looking at you with a nervous smile on her face and you see those red streaks, shut up for a minute and listen close, because she can't not say what she's about to say. She can't stop it. It's going to come out of her like a volcano. It may not be perfectly articulate, but it's going to be deep. Don't miss it. Now, here's what I found over all the years that I've been coaching. All the various types and styles, age, maturity, education, culture, background, religious beliefs, lifestyles that I've coached. Often it's the introverts, the quiet ones, the ones who have a burden to share some deep, meaningful content that they're horrified of getting a microphone in their hand or getting in front of a camera. They just know, like my quiet little wife, there's something burning a hole in their heart, burning a hole in the tip of their tongue. They can't not say it. And what they need help with is how to articulate it. And I can tell you this, many of them, they don't speak often, but by the time they speak, either they have taken so much painful precaution to intentionally select every single syllable of what they have to say, that it will come out so measured that it almost sounds stoic. But they're cautious about every word, every syllable, every intention. They want you to know exactly what they can't not say, but they also want you to know that they've painfully considered every word, every meaning, every intent, every angle that it might be misunderstood, and they're giving it to you the best they can. As opposed to that person that, well, I used to say it like this, in network meetings and Toastmaster meetings, you find them all the time. Two groups of people. One group of people who just has something to say and they're trying to figure out the right way to say it. And then another group of people who they don't have anything important to say, they just have to say something. They can't not talk. It doesn't have to make any sense. It doesn't have to be important. It doesn't have to be relevant. It doesn't have to be life-changing. It doesn't have to transmute production. It doesn't have to transform anybody's lives. They just can't not talk. Those are two totally different people. What did George Bernard Shaw say? The biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place. A lot of people will confidently speak, confidently lay out words, confidently speak until their head pops off, or yours does as you listen. But when they're done talking, you realize they've said nothing of value, nothing that will make a difference in your life. They just love to hear themselves talk. Then you have those who are so cautious, so measured, so intentional that you can't get them to talk very often. You can't get them to talk when you want to, but when they do talk, it's measured, it's concise, it's valuable. And if they ramble, it's because they're terrified. They're petrified of talking in front of you. They're just trying to fill the space with words until you stop listening because they don't know what else to say. But what they did say, probably going to change your life. My job as a communications coach, as a leadership coach, is to understand the difference in your communication styles. Why would my client even possibly say, I felt more confident before we started coaching? Well, because it's real easy to be confident in your ability to talk before you understand the magnitude of what you have to say in the life of others. When you have the gift of gab to just ramble, to just say words and believe that they're going to be life-changing, to even add great voice inflection, the skill to read off the page with a good voice intonation and make it come alive. And that's a skill set. Actors use it all the time. It's not a bad thing. Stage performers use it all the time. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But to believe that the ability to perform your vocal talent in front of a crowd, whether it's from a script or from the top of your head, impromptu, off the cuff, to believe that that is the same as a measured communication style where you're diligently processing every word and the impact that it's going to have on the people around you, the lives that you speak into, those, my friend, are two totally different things. If you think I'm kidding, watch the podcasts, the videos, the short reels that are just silliness, cats and dogs playing with each other, squirrels being chased across the yard by a little kid. Watch the amount of views that they get. They have no great bearing in life. They're not going to change anything. Those kind of videos will not end poverty or world hunger or stop an AIDS epidemic. But they'll distract you and keep your attention. That's a communicator with great bravado, the ability to capture you and keep your attention. That's great. It's awesome. Yay. Yay. But the one that could bring the end to world hunger or poverty or disease, that's a communicator who can effectively motivate people to change the direction of their life, to do something different than they've been doing all along. And that, my friends, is significantly more important, more weighty, and must be more calculated. And that's why those who have a great sense of bravado, and I can talk to anybody, bravado, not vibrato, that's a different thing. See how easy that is? Vibrato is the shaking in the voice when you sing. Bravado is, it's false security, false confidence. When you have that, you feel like you can talk to anybody anytime. That's awesome. But it may not be true. And it doesn't make you a great communicator. Being responsible and intentional about your communication, that makes you a great communicator. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I challenge you as a communicator to do the same. I'm Jay Lauren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Lauren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Lauren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Lauren will serve you well.
Thank you.